Thank you for joining me today on Paint a Beautiful Picture. This is episode number 195, Teaching Independent Thought. Yesterday, we talked about the importance of nurturing a quiet spirit. So today we're going to piggyback off of that idea. When we're constantly bombarded by noise, especially by a particular viewpoint. So I know someone who used to listen to talk radio relentlessly, and a very, I'm going to use the word agitated because that was the way I perceived of it. This very agitated attitude of talk radio. I won't name the persons to whom they were listening, but some of them you might be familiar with. Anyway, instead of them developing all of their own ideas, they were letting someone else feed them all this stuff all day long. And I do mean 8-10 hours a day. And so what do you know? That's what they thought. That's what they said. That's what they thought they believed. Yeah, because we're strongly influenced by what we hear and by those with whom we associate, even on a radio or a TV show. If you're watching the news all day long and it's predominantly negative news and they go over and over and over again, the same story from 4,000 different angles, and it's about why there needs to be whatever. I'm not going to jump on any political bandwagon and raise Cain about any particular issue. That's not my point here. But so you're listening to someone tell you and tell you and tell you and tell you and tell you. What do you know? That informs your thinking, and it's very likely to be over time what you start to think or how you believe. It can have the opposite effect. It can make you come against that, like, no, I don't believe that. No, I don't think that. It can literally force you in the opposite direction, but it's very influential what we hear, especially what we hear repeatedly. The advantage of quiet and a quiet mind is our ability to develop our own thoughts, our own ideas, our own beliefs about something, and that's the goal. You want your child to be able to think independently. So you can ask them, what do you think about that? And their thoughts are radically different than yours. They're 8 or 9 years old and they tell you this very off-the-wall idea. You're not even sure where it might have come from. And they say, oh, I just thought of it myself. It's actually very possible, because I have a son who doesn't think anything like my other son and I. We tend to think more similarly. And when he was a kid, it was kind of shocking to me sometimes, the things he thought. And he was very free to express that to me. You need to let your child think what they think and say, okay, so why do you think that? How do you think you came to that conclusion? I'm not telling you there isn't faulty thinking. That isn't my point right now, because there definitely is. And you have to be capable of correcting that or refuting that or coming at that with actual facts and truth that help your kid not go down a bad road. But just in general concepts, allowing them to express their thoughts freely without judgment or criticism helps them start to see the value of independent thinking. Often some of the most creative solutions that have ever happened on this planet, not just in our time, but historically as well, came through very strong independent thinkers. Because instead of thinking like everybody else in the whole wide world, they thought differently. And so they approached things differently, and they came up with a radical solution that nobody else came up with, because that wasn't the direction their thoughts were going. So when you allow your child the freedom of independent thought, you are actually fostering great possibility, not only for them, but possibly for the well-being of all of mankind. Don't squelch your child's thought life, even if you don't agree with it. As we've talked about a lot of times before, there are multiple perspectives of things, and none of those perspectives are 100% right or 100% wrong. They are only different. So I'm going to show you again, just for your sake. I guess I better hold it where you can see it. So this here, as you can see, shows you a dog and some words in red and a white background with polka dots. And you can go into more depth, The dog is wearing a black and white striped shirt. The dog is wearing glasses. The dog has long ears. You can talk about all those things, but that is from that perspective. But you know what? I'm not seeing that. I'm seeing a white background with black polka dots and a bunch of words and a UPC code. That's what I'm seeing. Like this. We are not seeing the same thing because we're not standing in the same place. Okay? That's what you have to understand. Life is really like that. We do not all see the exact same thing. We do not have the same thoughts or perception of something. No one is necessarily right or wrong. They're just seeing it differently. Sadly, in our world, there is not a lot of respect. I should say that again. In our world, there is not a lot of respect. And so we have a hard time when someone sees it differently than us. We want to say they're bigoted, they hate me, they're being mean, they're bullying me. No, just because someone has a different perspective or a different idea from you doesn't make them wrong or awful or hateful or bigoted. It just means they're different and they see it differently, and that's perfectly acceptable. If we can start having more of those kinds of conversations with our children and with one another, a whole lot of this nonsense, all this hating each other and fighting each other, and I know you, blah, 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 this stuff could go away. Because if we would actually learn to listen and respect and care about that other person's viewpoint as being equally valid to mine, we could start to get somewhere in a cooperative spirit together. I am not saying there isn't a definitive, absolute right and wrong, because there certainly is. It is wrong to lie. It is right to tell the truth. It is wrong to take someone else's possessions. It is right to work to earn what you want. It is wrong to kill someone. It is right to respect life and preserve life and care for life. There are absolutes, no question about it. But there is also a lot of room in the world for different kinds of thoughts and ideas, and our children need to know that that's perfectly okay. They can think independently. My son, one time, at the end of the school year, said, "Mom, I want to get a mohawk. I realize it's against the school rules, etc., but my grandfather was an American Indian. My great-grandfather was an Indian. I want to get a mohawk." I said, "Go ahead, dude, fine." And he did. We even got bushwhacks and everything. He had an awesome mohawk, incidentally. And he went to school. Oh, wow. Did I hear about this? And I told the principal really truly, I said, "I'm not trying to develop rebellion in my son. That is far, far from it. I consciously told him he could disobey this rule on the last day of school and hence have a mohawk all summer long, because I don't think that hair is worth having a big fight about." And so, out of my own personal principles, out of my independent thought, I allowed my son to get his hair this way. And they allowed him to stay in school that day. Normally they would not have, but after I had a discussion with the principal, he in fact was allowed to attend school that day, and he did have a mohawk all summer long. I was good with that. I have no trouble with that. Neither one of my sons had piercings or tattoos or things like that as teenagers. It isn't that I didn't want them to do it. It was that I didn't want them just going along with the crowd. I felt like it was probably a more independent thought not to than to do what everybody else around them thought was cool. You need to help your child understand. Yes, there's an element of wanting to fit in and being socially acceptable, but when you hang with a group of kids where it's socially acceptable to shoot up heroin or snort cocaine, then they need to have enough independent thought to say, "Well, I'm not doing that. That's a really stupid thing to do. And this stuff will kill you, man. And this is going to really do things to my body. And I'm still a young, developing human. The last thing I'm going to do is jam something into my body or snort something into my body, do something that has great potential to harm me." No. And they need to have a strong enough sense of independent thought not to just go along with the whole crowd, everything that's happening. I'm sure every single living human being, especially in the United States of America, has heard the statement, Well, if your friend jumps off a bridge, are you going to do it too? And of course, we hope the kid knows, no, not really. There is validity to that, but it's kind of an old example, and I'm not sure kids appreciate it. It is much more that if someone decides to go ahead with a course of action that is either A, foolish, or B, contradictory to what is right, are you going to go ahead and do it too, just because they are your friend? Is that good, sound thinking? So you need to develop in your child the sense of good, sound, independent thinking. There isn't anything wrong with that at all. There's no question it is hard to swim against the current of popular opinion. It's very challenging to swim against the current of all of your friends trying to push you back, but you're trying to go forward. It will sometimes involve a certain amount of uh, ostracization where people don't want to be with you anymore. They will ostracize you. It may involve a certain amount of criticism. You need to help your child understand this. So what if everybody criticizes you? If you know that what you're doing is right, if you know what you are doing is best, if you have a strong reason for what you're doing, then those people are just going to have to deal with it, get over it, leave you, insult you, whatever they need to do. But you need to continue to pursue the correct course of action. You have to really strongly teach this to your child and encourage your child, because it's not going to come easily or naturally, especially to the kind of withdrawn, shy, quiet kid. They're going to have a real hard time going against the grain. But if they have this strong sense of themselves and the value of their own thoughts and ideas, it will be easier for them to do it. That's why you, as a parent, need to listen to them, respect what they're saying. So you say to them, our entire family is going to do this. And they're like, I just hate that. And they're 16 years old. I hate that. I don't really want to do that anymore. So, well, what would you like to do instead? Okay, I really want to go whitewater rafting in Colorado. We always go to the beach. I want to go whitewater rafting. Either you say to them, will you come along with the family on this trip, because that's what we all do and we always have and we love it. And I respect that you don't, but please come with us. And I will take you in 2 weeks to Colorado. We'll go do it. Maybe not everybody in the whole family, but I respect that that's what you really, really want to do, and we're going to go do it. And follow through, do it. Let them have their own ideas and their own independent thoughts, and even allow them room to pursue it, and even go do it with them. You might find out something that you really like. You have places you will draw the line. My former husband used to go jump out of airplanes. He really liked to parachute. I wasn't ever going to jump out of an airplane. It was never going to happen. And I told both my sons, you want to do that? I will take you there. I'll watch you. I'll everything. But I'm not going to jump out of an airplane. You also have a right to draw the line and say, in my independent thought processes, I'm not going to do that. But I'll support you while you do that. There's nothing wrong with it. You're braver than me. You have different ideas than I do. You go right ahead. That's awesome. If you're very, very, I'm going to use the word creative, so you prefer drawing and painting and all these other things, but your kid wants to go to the shooting range because he thinks it's really awesome to shoot a gun, and he just wants to do it. He wants to do skeet, or he wants to see what it's like. Okay, that may be a very big leap for you, and yet I would encourage you to foster that. If you're a very artsy person and you're always drawing and painting, and your kid wants a chemistry set, and you're like, there's not a scientific bone in my body, so I don't know exactly where this came from. Well, buy the kid a chemistry set and start fostering who he is or who she is, and let them develop that sense of independent thought and who they are, the way they see the world, the things they would like to do. I really want you to know that it is a challenge to be a parent of a person who is radically different than you are. And I am that. I am a parent of someone so different than me. And if you meet that challenge and you foster that in them and you help them to think independently, you help them develop who they are as a human being. It's really very rewarding. It really is. And so it is part of where we as parents make this determination either before we have children or while they're little or even when they're bigger and we haven't done great at it, but we hear and learn new truth and we make this determination. I'm going to foster my child's independent thoughts and allow her to be who she is. She's not a mini me. She is her own person. I'm going to foster that and allow that. Teacher, it's awesome to have your own thoughts, your own ideas, and to pursue them. And then their life is richer and fuller. And honestly, so is yours, because you are exposed to things you might not have been, because your child invited you or was interested and took you along on that part of their journey. My challenge question for you today is this: am I threatened by my child or children's independent thoughts? Do I know how to let them express them, and am I good at respecting what they say to me? That may be a tougher challenge question than you know. It might take you a little while to chew that one over, but I think it's a really valid question for us to ask ourselves as parents. Please leave me comments, questions, or suggestions. It's been really great being with you today. You may find additional information on our paintabeautifulpicture.com website. Additionally, you may watch me on Rumble, and you may also listen to a podcast on Buzzsprout or Spreaker, all under the name Paint a Beautiful Picture. If you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. You may subscribe, and if you are interested in receiving notifications, please hit the notifications button.